This video is brought to you by Squarespace. I try to stay relatively positive on this channel, especially when covering young quarterbacks because it's the most difficult position to play in football and progression takes time. But sometimes bad football needs to be covered without a sugarcoat. So a fair warning to all of my Bears fans out there. You're not going to like some of the things you hear today, but as an analyst, it's my job to bring you guys my honest, unfiltered opinion. And in this case, it's pretty bleak. I spent my last few days watching all 350 of Justin Fields' dropbacks last season, and I don't think I've ever been more frustrated when going through someone's tape. When I covered this offense after their Week 3 disaster against Cleveland, I said that if there was anything good to come out of that game, it was that things literally could not get any worse. I was wrong. From coaching to offensive line play to quarterback play, it was all around some of the worst tape I've ever watched. And as someone who really liked Fields coming out of college, the worst part was we should have seen it coming. In college, Fields thrived when he could hold on to the ball for a long time. In 2020, his average time to throw was over 3 seconds, which is astronomically high, and deep passing was his biggest strength. Ohio State's offensive line was good enough to support this playstyle the vast majority of the time, and he was throwing to Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who were both picked in the top 15 of the 2022 NFL Draft. Fields' supporting cast was about as luxurious as it can get while he was at Ohio State. The players around him complemented his unorthodox playstyle, turning Ohio State into an offensive powerhouse. But there was one glaringly obvious issue with Fields' game. He was awful under pressure. I mean, we're talking a passer rating of 54, a completion percentage of just over 40, and a yards per attempt average of under 6. When I made my scouting report on Fields before the draft, my overarching point was that the degree to which he succeeds at the next level was going to be heavily dependent on the degree to which his new team could support his playstyle. I said that if his new team couldn't set him up for success, he would build bad habits, which, if not immediately addressed, could do irreversible damage to his development. When Fields was faced with pressure in college, everything great about his game would disappear. He'd turn into a one-read quarterback who would lock onto a predetermined receiver, then either force the ball into that predetermined target or drop his eyes to scramble impulsively. That bad habit immediately translated to the NFL and only led to more bad habits that we didn't even see in college. In Week 3 against Cleveland, Fields made his starting debut, and in that game he was pressured on over 50% of his dropbacks and took a whopping 9 sacks. I covered this game more in depth right after it happened, so if you're a Bears fan and you're feeling extra self-destructive today, I'll attach a link to that video in the description. But as I said earlier, viewer discretion is advised. I really believe that that disaster of a game had an extremely detrimental impact on Fields' development as a quarterback, because after that, the bad habits increased in both quantity and frequency. They became an every down thing. I mean, I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I saw Fields progress to a secondary read and get the ball out on time all season long. Every single play, it was first read, scramble, over and over again. Here's an example from Week 5 against Vegas. Chicago lined up with 2 receivers to the bottom of your screen and 2 tight ends to the top. The defender lined up over the number 1 receiver to the top of your screen is Amik Robertson, who's a cornerback. And when a corner aligns over a tight end, the defense is almost always in zone coverage. Combine the zone coverage identifier with Vegas' single high safety shell, and it's safe to assume that they're in cover 3. Chicago has a spot concept called to the top of your screen, with Cole Kmet running a corner, Jimmy Graham running a snag, and Damian Williams running to the flat out of the backfield. Then, on the backside, there's a levels concept between Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson. Fields is reading this concept from left to right, first looking at the spot concept, then progressing to the backside. Pre-snap, he wants to target Cole Kmet on that corner, but the only scenario that should allow Kmet to get this ball is if the outside corner covering the deep third on that side bites on the snag, which will almost never happen. As soon as Fields sees Robertson drop with Kmet, he should check off and move to the backside. Instead, he panics, gets jittery in the pocket, and tries to force the ball into Kmet anyway, with Allen Robinson sitting wide open on the other side of the field. Fields is not reading anything here. He's locking his eyes onto his predetermined target, then panicking when that target predictably doesn't get open. This is not a sustainable way of playing quarterback in the NFL. But you watch plays like this next one I'm about to show you, and you start to understand why he's playing like this. Here, Fields has Darnell Mooney on a speed out at the top of your screen with a Texas route from Khalil Herbert out of the backfield. And on the other side, he has a snag flat combo similar to the one you saw on the last play. Again, Fields locks onto his first read, which this time is Darnell Mooney on the speed out, and forces the ball in there despite tight coverage. He had Khalil Herbert open underneath, but if he had held onto the ball for any longer, Yannick Ngakoue would have had a strip sack. Fields was terrified to progress to the backside of route concepts last season because he had no trust in his offensive line. And if you watch games like the blowout loss to Tampa in Week 7, or the Week 14 game against Green Bay where Fields was pressured 28 times, you can see why. The offensive line might hold up against less competitive pass rushers, but trust in one's offensive line is built with consistently good pass protection, which Fields just didn't have. This lack of trust in his offensive line led to even bigger problems as well, such as Fields not trusting his arm, which would have been unimaginable when he was in college. On this play from the following week against Green Bay, Chicago came out in a 2-by-2 formation, meaning there were 2 eligible receivers aligned to each side of the ball. But they put tight end Cole Kmet in motion pre-snap to get an idea of what Green Bay was doing coverage-wise. Because Kmet was followed in his motion to the other side of the formation, Chicago knew that Green Bay was in man coverage. Fields has 20-yard stop routes from the number 1 receivers on both sides of the formation, then on the inside, a shallow crossing route from Cole Kmet, and a divide route from Allen Robinson, who has the option to bend his route inside if the middle of the field is open. Green Bay is in cover 1 cross, which typically tells the weak side safety to undercut crossing routes over the middle, and the strong side safety to play center field. But the Packers have the strong side safety providing vertical help for the strong side number 1. That leaves the middle of the field wide open, which Fields sees after he takes the snap. That should tell him to get his eyes on the divide route from Allen Robinson, and it does. He's in a clean pocket, and Robinson is starting to bend his route inside with more than enough separation to catch this ball in stride. This is a touchdown if it's thrown on time. And Fields absolutely has what it takes to make this throw, but he doesn't. He feels the slightest bit of pressure, he panics, leaves the pocket, then heaves up a prayer when it's way too late, and it's picked off in the back of the end zone. He may have thought that he had a free play here because the officials did miss an offside call on Green Bay, but that's not important. What is important is the fact that Fields checked off an open receiver, only to leave a clean pocket and abandon an easy touchdown. Now, at the end of the day, a mistake is nothing more than an opportunity to learn at this stage in a quarterback's career. The problem is, Fields isn't demonstrating the ability to learn from his mistakes. Later in that same game against Green Bay, Fields got an opportunity to redeem himself because Chicago called the same play against the same coverage. Except this time, the scenario favors Chicago even more. Last time, Darnell Mooney lined up as the number 1 to the 3 receiver side and was met with double coverage from the corner and the center field safety. This forced Allen Robinson to bend his route inside, and while it should have been easy for Fields to hit Robinson for a touchdown, a throw over the top would have been even easier. So this time, Chicago aligned Mooney as the isolated receiver to the weak side of the formation, and Green Bay did exactly what Chicago expected them to do. Because Mooney was aligned to the other side, they flipped the roles of the safeties, which meant that there was no help over the top to the 3 receiver side, and that Cole Kmet would have inside leverage over the supporting safety responsible for the hook over the middle on his crossing route. Post-snap, Fields looks to Kmet first, who's open over the middle, but he wants the deep shot, so he progresses to Allen Robinson, who predictably torches Chandon Sullivan in the slot, and is wide open over the top for yet another easy touchdown. Instead of hitting him deep for 6 points, Fields, again, drops his eyes, leaves the clean pocket, and by the time he picks his eyes back up, it's way too late. Chicago's front office failed to provide Justin Fields with the supporting cast he needed in his rookie year, but blaming everything on play calling is denial. Fields was given countless opportunities to succeed within structure, and he failed to do so again and again. Of course, there are plays that are totally on the offensive line for a blown protection assignment, and there are plays that are totally on the receivers for not separating against man coverage. But on the majority of last year's negative plays, Fields flat out failed to execute. Does that mean he's a guaranteed bust? Of course not. There are games like Week 9 against Pittsburgh or Week 15 against Minnesota that keep my hope for Fields alive, because it's obvious that the talent is there. The problem is, he clearly needs a far better supporting cast to reach his potential, and even after a new coaching staff took over, he still doesn't have it. The new staff failed to land any notable offensive linemen over the offseason aside from Lucas Patrick, who's a fringe starter at best, and Jason Peters is gone, so Chicago's offensive line could be even worse in 2022 than it was in 2021. On top of that, right now, the Bears' top 4 receivers are Darnell Mooney, Equanimeous St. Brown, Velus Jones, and Byron Pringle. I don't think re-signing Allen Robinson was even an option because he probably wanted to get the hell out of Chicago as fast as possible, but if Justin Fields' development was the priority, they would have at least drafted an offensive player with one of their first 2 picks. I mean, look at what the Jets have done for Zach Wilson in the last few months. Or even what the new staff in Jacksonville has done for Trevor Lawrence in their first offseason. Yeah, they probably overpaid for Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, but by getting guys like Kirk, Jones, Brandon Scherf, and Evan Ingram, they're at least making an effort to surround their young quarterback with the supporting cast he needs to reach his full potential. The new staff in Chicago might want Fields to succeed, but they're setting him up to fail, and it's tough to blame them. Think about it. Which scenario gives you better odds of succeeding as a brand new NFL staff? Rebuilding in 2022 to fix the salary cap situation that Ryan Pace left behind at the expense of Justin Fields' long-term development, who, keep in mind, this staff did not pick, or going after big-name players in free agency and the draft, putting the team deeper into salary cap hell, and hoping that that's enough to get Fields back on the right track in terms of development. To me, the former is the obvious answer, and it seems like that's the way this is heading. Despite the bleakness of this reality, I still have hope for Fields. As terrible as the tape was, there's still something there. He's just too talented for this to be the end. The situation in Chicago is so bad right now that if Fields is even a serviceable starter next year, I'll be extremely impressed. Otherwise, I think the most realistic path to success for Fields in this league is somewhere far, far away from Chicago. Before I go, I'd like to share a word from the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. If you have a business or are interested in starting one, Squarespace is a phenomenal resource for building your online presence. It's an all-in-one platform that can help get your brand off the ground or take your business to the next level by building a website. What you see on your screen now is the site I created for my brand, and all of this was done in just a few hours. It's a really user-friendly service and offers tons of tools that can help you do whatever it is you want to do with a website. Personally, for now, I'm using it as a gallery to showcase my work on YouTube, so on the homepage you can see my most recent videos. Squarespace also offers countless other products and services such as website templates, analytics, and the ability to hire an expert. Whatever you want to do to grow your brand, and wherever you are in the process, Squarespace has a service for you. So go check out squarespace.com for a 14-day trial. Then, when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/BillyStevens or click the link at the very top of the description to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Again, that's squarespace.com/BillyStevens for 10% off your first purchase. If you're a Bears fan and you made it this far, your strength is greatly appreciated. As a Bills fan, trust me when I say I know what it's like to root for a bad football team. Seems like it was just yesterday that we were warming up to the idea of Matt Castle being our starting quarterback. If you'd like to support the channel, links to my Patreon and Twitter will be down in the description, but that's all I've got for now. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.